Hi guys, Dr. to the bonus video. Yes, I'm doing this video like Shit Ferreras does with his videos. But that's beside the point. I decided to rank the first 6 Yukio protagonists from worst to best. But because I don't want to do this alone, I actually asked Amateur Tempest, another cover artist on YouTube, you should subscribe to him by the way, to help me with this list. He's gonna explain the rules and how this goes. So take this away, Tempest.
Hey, this is Amateur Tempest speaking, and here to give you my personal ranking of the Yu-Gi-Oh protagonists. When ranking these characters, I'll be doing so based on 3 criteria. First up, their personality, which is basically how they conduct themselves. Then, their arc, which is their storyline. And lastly, their deck, what type of cards they use and how they duel overall. So, let's get started with the one at the very bottom of this list, who basically fails on all 3 accounts. Yuma Tsukumo, the goofy and airheaded protagonist from Sexal. Personality wise, these are traits that belong more to a side character than the main one, and it can be quote unquote funny at first, but it comes annoying fast. Real fast. Yuma is also the first and hopefully the last protagonist that outright sucks at playing duel monsters. At first, I was kinda intrigued. The concept is quite interesting. Astro, his counterpart, so to speak, can play the game. So the idea was that Yuma learns to play through Astro. This idea, however, is quickly scrapped, as Yuma in some cases early on already shows that he can outbeat Astro when it comes to making strategies. This makes its arc pretty shallow, as Yuma only learns when the plot demands it, instead of natural progression. What's also disappointing is that Astro, as Yuma's counterpart, hardly seems to take any lessons out of this partnership at all. You know, like the other partnership this series clearly didn't rip off from. And lastly, his deck. Yeah, his deck. I already mentioned how Yuya sucks at playing the game, and though Astro makes up for it, it doesn't excuse Yuma's buffoonish level of play. It also doesn't help that some of his more iconic cards are weak throwbacks to the first Yu-Gi-Oh! In the form of Gagaga Magician and Gagaga Girl. But the greatest offense is that Yuma can literally pull out cards from out of nowhere to give him an edge in duels in the form of Destiny Draw or Shining Draw, depending on which version you're watching. Yeah, most series have those instances where the protagonist uses a card you've never seen before, only to be used in those places where it's very convenient. But in those cases, you could kinda imagine the card actually being in their deck. With these Zexal weapons here, however, it's outright insulting. As for me, it simply shows his deck isn't capable to save him, even if he really wanted to.
Well, this might be one of my most controversial picks for this list, but my least favorite protagonist is Yugimoto. Please put the pitchforks down and let me explain. Yes, he is on the list, but for me personally, I don't hate any of the characters on this list. But the reason why I like Yuki the least is because his series is just outdated, and it's just filled with filler arcs that I don't even like him that much anymore. So, what do I actually like about him? Well, his relationship with the Pharaoh is really good throughout the series. You usually just see Yugi and the Pharaoh get together and think of a plan and do it together. And that's my another complaint. He barely even duels. Most of the time, it's the Pharaoh who's dueling. But my next thing I actually like about him is his voice. Dan Green is a pretty good voice actor, and I'm just gonna say the best voice actor for 4 kids ever. So yeah, Yuki is kind of bland in my opinion. His cards are kind of like misorganized and not really that likable to me, in my opinion. Yugi is just boring to me, but it does have some good elements that keep him from being hated.
Let's move on to our next contestant, which is the unknown, aka the Playmaker, aka Yusaki Fujiki. Now, before you start ranting, before putting him on the list so low, let me point out that I've never finished Yu-Gi-Oh! Frames. I just couldn't stand those Link monsters, and though I tried to give it a shot, the series didn't help me convince otherwise, and I couldn't quite power through the next, what, 80 some episodes? We're here to talk about Unknown, aka the Playmaker, aka. Okay, you get the point. The protagonist is the cool type character, as in cool that he basically wants to murder. Cool. He's the first in the Yu-Gi-Oh series not to duel just for fun, and it's all about getting revenge rather than some noble goal. His stoic and cold approach to situations was a breath of fresh air for the series, and it fit in quite nicely with the story overall. As for his deck, I know I'm quite biased here, but to be fair, his deck seemed quite interesting. The protagonist utilizes the newly introduced monster type Cybers, which was connected to the story itself. But with all that said, I'd still say his deck is about average. Yusaku has the same problem the previous one has, though. You know, the one I shall not name again.
Stop! Stop! He's already dead!
This one also pulls out cards from nowhere. Well, the data storm in this case. There are limitations to this though, making it somewhat better. For starters, what Yusaku uses is called a skill, a new rule and something not only Yusaku can do. This means that even if Yusaku can pull cards from out of nowhere, he still needs to deal with skills from other players as well, making the whole ordeal somewhat more balanced. He also can only use this skill when his life points are 1000 or lower, something I would say is the true downside to this, but you know. But in the end, the reason why I'm putting him on the list so low is mainly because I can't judge his character arc properly. From what I've seen, he opens up more as the series goes on, but that's about it. Because he achieved his main goal pretty early on, it also makes it quite hard to see a proper arc for this character after that. But, that said, I haven't seen quite a bit, so feel free to point out why I'm so wrong down in the comments.
Stick with me, I'm gonna rant for a bit. My next pick is Jay and Yugi. I'm just gonna get the reasons why I hate him. Okay, right reasons first. I just fell out of him. As a kid, I used to love Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. But then I've fallen out of the show, and while I still don't hate it, I don't care for it. I don't watch it that often. It just feels outdated for me, like the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And Jaden definitely feels outdated. And secondly, the major reason, he just annoys me. Sometimes, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, I have to play with him constantly in order to unlock you say, but I have to keep doing back and forth, hearing the same audio time and time again, and it just made me angry. Seriously, I thought Hoopa from Pokemon Clash of the Ages was bad. This is repetitively bad. Sorry. Now, here's why I like him. I like his calm nature. I like him being friends with everyone and actually believing and trusting his cards. I mean, he used the Wind Dragon of Raw in one episode. That's amazing. I like him trying to be the successor to Yugi. Another reason I love / hate him is because of his calm nature turning into basically emo. I mean, people complain that Crouch Drive was forced, but me it feels really forced. I mean, we've gone from a chill guy into the next emo. Seriously. And while I do admit that it is kind of clever seeing him turn from a guy, go out guy to basically trying to avoid his friends, that's too close to the real world. And yeah, again, second one on the list, I have a love-hate relationship with him. He's just, sometimes the bad stuff outweighs the good stuff outweighs the bad stuff. But here, it's equally so, maybe a bit good. Anyway, I have to calm down. Going to Tempest's next pick.
The next entry is Yuya Sasaki from Arc V. It was a close call as I was almost ready to dump him under the last entry. But Yuya was saved by his counterparts, who kinda make up for Yuya himself. Let's start with the good thing, which is Yuya's deck. It's quite entertaining to watch, get it?
Boo! You stink!
Learning and utilizing all different types of summoning methods, it's quite fun to see, and in combining said methods, make Yuya a unique protagonist. Yuya's stick is that he wants everyone to smile from watching his duels. Although that's quite a nice sentiment, the setting quickly changes into something that doesn't accommodate for this. This results in Yuya constantly whining about his situation, only for everyone around him to lift him back up again. Even his own mother complains that he shouldn't whine as much as he beats some sense into him. Yuya then gets motivated, only to get depressed moments later. These ups and downs are quite annoying to sit through. What's more annoying is that his attitude doesn't fit the mood of the series at all. What's also frustrating is when Yuya shows his evil side, which is portrayed as the worst thing ever, even though he simply defeats his enemy.
This is the worst of me!
Most of the time, he does far less harm than his attackers did before, yet Yuya is the one that is somehow the bad guy. All these issues combined make Yuya a mess, but like I mentioned before, he has 3 counterparts, so that kinda makes it better. Lastly, his arc, which is also a mess. There are several things that you could argue Yuya has done or has learned at the end. A way to entertain everyone when dueling? Not really. Simply being a better or more composed person? A little. No. The part that sticks out the most is Yuya somewhat embracing his role as the founder of the pendulum summoning, and not being complacent or thinking that is unique simply for having it. Him pushing himself to be better so that he can inspire others to do greater things is all that came out of this rushed ending. That, however, is not enough to push him on a higher place on this list.
Okay, to explain my thoughts on the series before I go to this next protagonist, here's a little skit I made. Okay, guys, we need an idea for 5th series of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's an anniversary series, so what should we do? I have an idea. How about we make a series where they travel through different dimensions throughout the different franchises, and then have the main character duel those franchise villains in order to save his girlfriend from another dimension? That's an excellent idea. Then we can have all the characters plot the film and go through the window, have a twist thrown out of nowhere, and then we could basically make the main hero evil for no apparent reason whatsoever. What? That doesn't seem like a great idea. I know a lot of people will watch it. Never mind, it's the best idea ever. Here's all the monies. Yeah, that kind of explains what I think about the Arc 5. It starts out great, but falls downhill badly. Anyway, let's talk about Yuya, which is the main point of this segment. Yuya is a mixed bag in my opinion. I like that he tries and fight the anger within him, aka Sulk, and I also like of how he's trying to entertain everyone, even though the dark situation that's happening. I like it about him. What I don't like is the story. Like, I can't get invested in a character if a story is this bad. Like, I know Yuya is amazing, but I actually quit watching Arc 5 mostly because the story isn't that interesting, and most of the duels aren't really that interesting either. So, yeah, Yuya and Arc 5 are mostly mad to me, but hey, I don't hate him as much as I do with the other two, so I guess that's saying something.
So, now that we've dealt with the troublesome ones, let's discuss the good protagonists. The next two come close. They both have great points and some minor problems, and we're starting with Jaden Yuki on the 3rd place, considered as the cool guy, throwing down punchlines like, "That's game!" To me, he revived the concept of fusion summons with his deck alone. Jaden loves dueling more than anyone, and it shows. Every duel is fun and games to him, even if his enemies don't always have the same intentions. When his friends' lives are on the line, however, he snaps, as he's consumed with rage. The old saying of always fear a gentleman's anger perfectly applies here, as his turn to a darker version of himself is daunting to see, more so than any of the other entries.
Inside every man is a struggle between good and evil that cannot be resolved.
This also aligns perfectly with his arc, as his joy in dueling is taken away from him. From this point on, you can see Jaden struggle to accept this new power, as well as deal with the various threats along the way, only for it to finish with him having to relearn the most important thing, his joy for dueling. This is also where Jaden's flaw lies. I already mentioned how Yuya's ending was rather rushed, thus diminishing the impact of his arc, and Jaden suffers from the same problem. In Jaden's case, it's mainly the execution part that is lacking, as the idea itself is there. Another small annoyance with Jaden is that he's everywhere. By this I mean that every non-enemy introduced character challenges Jaden once, or twice if they're lucky, and from there on out they are cast aside to the famous cheerleading back row, never to be seen in action ever again. A progression of a character is at its best when said character is introduced to new ideals and beliefs, usually through rivals and friends. Because of this, Jaden's progression is also somewhat diminished because of the absence of said rivals and friends. Now, I don't mean that they're completely gone. I'm just saying that their contribution is.
Okay, number 3 is a character I should not like, but actually really do. It's Yusaku Fujiki from Yu-Gi-Oh! Frames. Like, I usually hate the plot of emo characters, basically no emotion, no character whatsoever, as I vaguely explained when I was talking about Jaden, but here, it's perfectly understandable. He went through torture when he was a little kid for 6 months, and when he said he actually had treatment and was saved, he was never actually saved that day. He was mentally tortured and wanted revenge on the people who caused him that torture to begin with in the first place. And when he finally opens his heart to people again, finally open up and try to make friends, his friend almost tries to take over the world and kill him. And at the end, he basically has to watch his friend die at the end.
Why do none of you understand? I am broken. I will always be broken.
And his throwing skills are amazing. I basically have his deck in full, because I actually love Link monsters, even after the controversy behind them. So yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Fujiki, for those reasons, belong this list. I just like 2 other protagonists better than him. And we'll talk about that later. But for now...
Now it's time to meet our runner-up, which is Uptem! Oh, and Yugimoto, but mostly Uptem.
Am I chopped liver?
No, that's what I am.
I'll refer to him as Yugioh for the sake of convenience. I don't think I need to say a lot about these characters. They are the OG Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist and made the franchise what it is today. They are the true king of games and have one of the best inspiring arcs to date. Their bonds spawned spin-offs, sexual,
I get it!
and even today, I bet that Yugi is the character people think about when they hear Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Ohs. They're Yugi-licious.
But he is not my number 1, and Yugi does have a flaw. And that flaw is, well, how do I put this? He cheats! Yeah, there's no other way of putting it. Yugi simply cheats. There are plenty of videos delving in on how Yugi cheats, but the 2 cases that always stick out for me are the first being when he fights Arcana in a Dark Magician duel. Here, he flat out changes the rules of a card his opponent is using. He does this multiple times, but here it causes a complete reversal of the game's outcome. And it's mainly because in this instance, he changes so many aspects of a single card that again, his opponent is using. The other case is when he's facing darts and his monster with infinite attack points. Yugi's answer, "Go beyond infinity!" Yeah, he actually did that. Instantly downgradable offense. Moving on.
Now we have my number 2 favorite, Yusei. At first I was gonna put Yusei at the number 3 spot, but when I rewatched some old episodes, I realized Yusei is a bro. Like, basically he cares about all his friends. When his friends got taken by the Dark Signers, he wasn't willing to duel one of them because he might, like, destroy them forever. But when the Dark Silence messed with them, and when Goodwin messed with them, he was vowed to actually fight back. In tragic duels like Yusei vs. Karen, and then later he had to fight Karen again to snap him out of it, saying that it's not his fault. And Yusei just makes friends with everyone. He helped Akisa, which is my second favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Goal, in my opinion. If you ask me what number 1 is, you're gonna hate me, so I'm not gonna mention it now. That's for a later video. Crow is just the best character with Yusei and have some of the best chemistry in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Jack, well, let's just face it, he has some of the best moments with Jack. Just blow code with Jack. Anyway, Yusei's number 2.
So, here we are at our last entry, Fudo Yusei. And yeah, I know I've been switching the names throughout this list. It just goes to show how I've been introduced to them, and it kinda gives away in what language I've seen them. As for Yusei, to me, he prevails on all 3 fronts. Being the more mature protagonist, Yusei is a good mix between calm, collected, yet compassionate. His care for his friends feels genuine as you watch him progress through the story, and his arc is also closely tied to that. Him creating bonds with those around him, and in the end connecting Neo Domino City to fend off future threats. Unlike the other entries, 5D takes time to actually flesh out its characters under normal situations, which makes the characters feel more real. Which of course also applies to Yusei. Dueling is also Yusei's forte. Much like Yugi, Yusei deals with all kinds of duels, and shows how he can actually come on top in all of those, without the cheating part. Yusei stands out to me from other protagonists because of his creed in dueling, in that even weak monsters can be useful. Yeah, sure, most Yu-Gi-Oh characters say this, but in Yusei's case, he actually shows it. In the second finale, so to speak, Yusei still uses the cards he used at the very beginning, and shows how they can be a powerful force when they work together, emphasizing the arc of creating bonds to strengthen all. So, there you have it, my personal ranking of the Yu-Gi-Oh protagonist. Do you agree? Probably not, but let me know what you think about it anyway by leaving a comment, or feel free to show me just how wrong I am. This was Amateur Tempest, thank you for hearing me rant, and who knows, till next time.
So, my number 1 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh character. A lot of people back then, when sexual release, were gonna hate me for this. But now, I'm on the Yuma game. Yuma is just an amazing protagonist. People say, yeah, he's a terrible duelist, but here's the thing. He's a kid! He's basically the youngest protagonist, and you just feel for him. It's like a papyrus situation. You just feel bad for him every time he gets knocked down. But every time he gets knocked down, he always tries to get back up. That's basically how he rolls. He's basically like Yusei. He doesn't treat his monsters just as another thing. He treats it like his friends, basically. Especially in one duel where he didn't send any monsters to the graveyard, and when he did, he just brought them back. That duel was awesome in my opinion. And secondly, his bond with Astro is just freaking hilarious every time I see him. Like, seriously, these two are kind of like Homer and Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. They're like a pretty good comedy duo. And again, Yuma is still available here. After losing Astro, he basically goes from his happy attitude into a meltdown, but he doesn't go into a complete emo situation like I explained with Jaden. Instead, he feels sympathetic. He basically lost his best friend, and his other friends trying to bring him out of it. And even when he said he's recovered from it, he's still accidentally doing what he and Astro did ago, but just doesn't notice it. And actually doors to get him back. Even when the Billions appear, he try and convince Shark, who became one of them, to find another way. And even after that, Shark lost because Yuma stopped his attack. And when in his final duel against Astro actually forced Yuma into a duel, because after all of what happened, Yuma said he was never gonna duel again. I mean, how could he? About Refetrix, Kite, the Barians, after all of that, why would he do again? Astro gave him the codes for that. So Yuma, in my opinion, is my number one favorite protagonist. Nothing can change my mind. Sexual's a masterpiece. Anyone who says so, well, that's your opinion. Anyway, I wanted to thank Amateur Tempest for co-writing with me on this video. I know it took a while, but I'm just gonna stick to my normal reviews for a while. Maybe a ranking video here and there. Anyway, see you guys next time. I'm not to the Brony Slayer. Fire up.